Good day, everyone. So this week we'll be looking at the introduction and conclusion. So as I've promised, I'll explain to you what is how do we come up with a good introduction and a good conclusion. Alright, so let's start with how do we create introduction, or why introduction is important in your speech. So introduction is the beginning of your speech, so you need to make sure that your audience want to listen. You need a way to motivate your audience to actually want to listen and stay throughout your presentation. So this introduction is 10% out of the entire length of your speech. So we have goals for introduction, and basically there are 4 primary goals. Let's look at all the goals. Okay, what is the first goal? The first goal is very important. As I mentioned, you need to get your audience attention. That's the goal of introduction. So you need to make sure that when you start, you can win your audience attention, you create curiosity, and you motivate them to want to know more so that they stay throughout the presentation. Alright, so how do you do this? So first you can actually come up with a startling statement. So you can choose to come up with a startling statement. It is a sentence that grabs your audience attention. So for example, you can enter and start with, all of you are murderers. When you say that, everyone will be startled and thinking, why is this speaker saying so? And then you go on and proceed saying, all of you are using automobile, so you are actually polluting and killing the environment. Okay, that is a startling statement. A startling statement can also be a statistic. For example, 90% of you sitting here have actually destroyed our world, for example. So you move on and talk about how pollution has affected the world and how it is destroying the world. Okay, so when you start with a startling statement, it grabs your audience attention, it creates curiosity, and your audience will want to know more about your topic. Or you can choose to come up with questions. There are, which involves the audience. Okay, there are 2 different types of question. Rhetorical, you don't really want response, you just want them to think. Okay, direct response would demand a response from your audience. Okay, so for example, you can say, how many of you here have been betrayed by a friend, for example. Okay, so you ask for a general response, so your audience will either raise their hand and whatnot. Okay, or you can choose to tell a story or supply personal reference. So anecdote or tell a story. You can come up with a personal story that relates to the topic, or you can come up with a made-up story that relates to the topic to get your audience attention. To make it fun, you can also start with a humor, or you can come up with a thought-provoking question, a quotation that will make your audience to think and be curious about the topic itself. Or even more interesting, you can perform an action. For example, you're an engineer, you want to talk about how to build a great building, then you come up with a model of a building and you show and perform. Or you want to talk about how do we be confident? You can start with singing, you can bring your guitar and play. Okay, so you can perform or motivate an action. So this is some way of you to actually get your audience attention. Okay, next the second goal is to establish listener relevance. So what I mean by this is, like I have explained last week, you need to make sure your speech can relate and affect your audience. Okay, and show the personal connection between your topic and your audience. So then they are able to understand, and it would be motivating for them to listen and stay throughout the speech. And next is, your goal is to establish credibility and goodwill. Here is, you need to build your credibility. Let's say you're a speaker and you're going to talk about health, eating healthy, for example. Okay, and you're a dietitian or nutritionist. Okay, so if you are that person, you have to establish that. You have to say that I've been working 7 years as a nutritionist. I've talked to people, I've helped people with their diet and whatnot. So you build your credibility. When you do that, it will create a believable speech. Okay, your audience would begin to believe you because you have created the ethos, your character, your competency. You would also appeal to your emotion because you're a nutritionist, you have worked for 7 years. You would say, okay, please eat healthy. This is good. You should eat a lot of vegetarian. You have to have a balanced meal, for example, okay? You can appeal to your audience emotion, and you can provide proof, statistic of why good diet, balanced diet would actually help to lead, would help the health of your audience. Okay, so that is perception of truth. So when you build your credibility, your audience would believe you and would want to stay on because they know that you are credible enough to give the talk. All right. Now, and finally, the final goal is to give a preview of what you're going to talk about in your body of your speech, or what is the speech is all about. So you state your thesis. So basically, this is the introduction. Next, in the next video, I'll be talking about how to create conclusion.